All right, so today we're going to dive into something huge, the story of human belief itself. We're talking about how we went from this wide open, personal kind of spirituality to the organized religions that shape so much of our world.
So let's start with this really powerful idea, this metaphor of drawing a circle. Think about it. It's so simple, right? You draw a line, and suddenly you have an in and an out. And that one simple act, well, that's pretty much the blueprint for organized religion.
Which of course begs the question, what came before the circles? I mean, before anyone drew any lines, what was our spiritual default setting? To really get that, we've got to rewind, way back.
And that takes us to these two big concepts, the circle and the field.
The field, that was the original state of things. Before any rules, before any books, spirituality was just out there. It was this deeply personal, direct connection you had with the world around you. You know, just imagine being one of our earliest ancestors, looking up at the night sky. No one's telling you what to think. It's just you and this incredible, jaw-dropping sense of wonder.
And this really gets to the heart of the difference. The field is all about you, your own experience. It's flexible. It's tied to nature. The circle? That's about us. It's organized. It has rules, shared beliefs, and a really clear group identity.
Okay, so if we all started out in this wide-open field, what happened? Why did we start drawing circles in the first place? What made us want to build walls around something that was so personal and free?
Well, it all comes down to a game-changing shift in how we lived. We went from being small, wandering groups to building huge cities and farming. All of a sudden, you've got thousands of strangers living side by side. How do you get them all on the same page? That's where the circles came in. They gave everyone a shared story, a common set of rules, a way to trust each other and build something bigger together.
Now, this didn't happen overnight, not at all. For most of human history, we were in the field. Then a little spark of organization started with the invention of farming. But the real explosion, when the big circles we recognize today really took shape, that happened during what's called the Axial Age. This is when so many of the world's major religions and philosophies really got drawn onto the map.
So, what happens next is pretty much inevitable, right? You've got these organized, expanding circles, and they start running right into the old open field. And that collision, well, it changed everything.
The problem was, the field was at a huge disadvantage. I mean, it's like a well-drilled army going up against a scattered crowd. The circle was organized, it was unified. The field was decentralized and personal. It just didn't have the structure to push back effectively.
And this is where we get to a really fascinating paradox. For the field to survive, it had to start acting like a circle. It had to get organized, define what it believed, create its own structures. Basically, to save itself, it had to become the very thing it wasn't.
And that's the real kicker, isn't it? Survival came with a price tag. The moment you build walls to protect yourself, you lose some of that boundless, open spirit you were trying to protect in the first place. It's a kind of tragic irony you see again and again in history.
Okay, so with that in mind, let's look at a really interesting example of a tradition that kind of lives right in the middle of this paradox, Sanatan Dharma, which most people know as Hinduism.
And this quote just nails its whole philosophy. The idea isn't that someone invented it, that they drew a circle. The idea is that it's a field. It's just there. It's a set of natural principles that people are constantly trying to understand and debate.
And what's so wild about it is that it's somehow both a field and a circle. On one hand, it's totally like the field. No single founder, no one single holy book you have to follow, and just this mind-boggling diversity of beliefs. It's less like a religion and more like a whole ecosystem of spiritual ideas.
But at the same time, over thousands of years, it also grew its own circles. It developed these very organized schools of thought and monastic orders, a lot of the time as a way to defend itself against other, more rigid circle religions. And that's its secret weapon, really. This ability to be both structured and flexible. It can draw a line when it needs to, but it never loses that core openness. That's how it's survived for so long.
All right, so let's bring this all back to today. What does this ancient tug-of-war between the field and the circle mean for us right now?
Well, if you look around, you'll see something that looks awfully familiar. There's this huge trend happening where millions of people are saying, you know what? This traditional circle, it isn't for me anymore. They're stepping outside of it. But they're not giving up on spirituality. They're looking for something more personal.
I'm talking about the whole spiritual but not religious phenomenon. And what is that really? It's a massive, collective return to the field. It's people wanting that direct connection, that sense of awe, without all the rules and institutions. It's almost like we're trying to get back to the way our earliest ancestors saw the world.
So in a way, the whole human spiritual story has come full circle, no pun intended. We started by just looking up at the stars in wonder. Then we built these giant, complicated systems, these circles, to explain the stars. And now, a lot of us are just looking up at the stars again.
Which leaves us with one last big question to think about. Is this a final return to the open field, to our natural state? Or are we just in a cycle? Will our deep-seated need to belong just lead us to draw new kinds of circles all over again? I guess that's a story we're all still writing.